And hello, everybody. Welcome to Exposing Manosphere, my first interview series with former Red Pillars. And to tell you why I'm doing this, so one day I came across a Reddit forum called X Red Pillars, and I came across a profile of a young man who used to follow the group and actually hated my guts. And talking to him, I found out that he actually changed, and I kind of wanted to know why, but he didn't really elaborate. So the reason why I did this is because I really want to know why people come to the Red Pill, what are the pros and cons? And I do that because sometimes it's tempting to see a community like the Red Pill and dismiss it as like 100% toxic. But at the same time, a lot of Red Pillars want to downplay the toxicity and only upplay the positivity, or at least what they think is positive about the group. And then I want to know, why do people leave? So why do people come to embrace such a particular philosophy, and why do they eventually just depart from the group? And oh, hello everybody! I'm looking at the live chat right now. The second thing I want to talk about is the length of my interviews. So, for respect for my guests and my time, I just really don't want these interviews going over an hour, nothing more than an hour and a half, but definitely not an hour. I kind of modeled it after the University of California, Berkeley Conversation with History series, where they interview people like Howard Zinn, Elizabeth Warren, and even former Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara, where the interviews only last for about an hour but are incredibly informative. And the last thing I want to say is that I will still make pre-recorded content, although I'm doing live streams right now. Don't worry, I really enjoy making those kind of videos, and I'll have plenty of them down the line in the near future. So I do want to jump right into this interview with my guest, Mike. Want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yes, hi, I'm Mike, former Red Pillar, and very happy to be here, Aaron. Thank you for having me on.
Appreciate it. So my first question is, can you tell me about yourself, like where you're from, where you grew up, childhood, and what you do for a living?
Well, I grew up in the Northeast, and I'm going to be 40 years old in another month. And childhood was really good. Had a nice two-parent family, younger brother. Everything was pretty much the typical American lifestyle. What you see in the movies. Growing up, I was always more of an introverted kid. A little bit shy. And because of that, there was a lot of problems socially, especially with girls, women growing up, and it was a problem throughout my teens and into my 20s, and eventually I found somebody who I thought I loved. I went and got married with them, and actually, to be honest, it was after my marriage that I really discovered what would later, it wasn't called red pill at the time, but what would later be known as red pill thinking. I didn't really discover that until after I got married, and that was back in 2007.
Okay. I always enjoy talking to people who found this community before I did, because it was in 2018, and there's so much prehistory that it can kind of get lost to the internet. So I'm curious, so how exactly did you find the red pill?
Well, YouTube was just starting to really be a thing back then. Of course, it wasn't nearly as big and as powerful and as popular as it is now, but there were people. There were YouTube content creators back then who were addressing, things not necessarily like the strict red pill philosophy that we have now, but kind of going into that ballpark. If you remember, I don't know if you remember this. Maybe some people in the chat remember these guys. They were called the True Force Loneliness guys. There were three of them. And they started off by just questioning the way the male female dynamic worked in society, and was that fair to all guys necessarily? And the conclusion they came to was that no, it really wasn't. Not for all guys. Only kind of like a select few, like the richest or the most handsome guys. Ended up with their pick, so to speak, of women or of girls. And, intuitively at the time that made a lot of sense to me, because that's kind of what I was going through. And, people are saying, well, Mike, you got married, you have a wife now. Why bother with this stuff if you're already married? And the reason is because deep down, I was still feeling kind of bitter and kind of disillusioned about, just the fact that throughout my childhood and my young adult life, I didn't really have much experience. And so I wanted to know more about, were other guys going through the same thing as I was? And, what are their experiences like? How do they compare to my own? And so it was very interesting hearing these guys' stories and learning more about it. And, through them, other guys started to pop up, and I started to, learn more about their story. And, I met some people whose stories were very similar to my own. Shortly after that, I got into reading Rouge and Chateau Artiste and people like that. And that's kind of how the whole spiral started.
Okay, what exactly did those the people you follow, like Rouge and you said Jacques Ortiz, what did they talk about?
Just how, for your typical average guy, not as the red pill says, the top 20% or whatever, just your typical average guy, how the deck is really stacked against them in terms of dating and finding a suitable girlfriend. And if you're in that range, which most of us by definition are, then you have to realize that there's going to be it's going to be a big challenge. It's going to be much more of a challenge for you than it is for those other guys. And this is something that a lot of dating advice people and mainstream dating advice people, they won't tell you that, right? They want to make you feel like everything is good, and then if you just work hard on yourself, if you work to do this, then everything's going to be okay. But I was at a stage in my life at that point where it's like, I couldn't bring myself to blame myself, pretty much. And I think that's, if I could make an observation, I think that's the attitude right now among a lot of the guys who are involved in Red Pill. Like they're not at a stage of maturity yet where they can really take a look at themselves and say, yeah, my lack of success or my problems are really the result of me and my behavior. It was much easier for me back then to just put the blame at the feet of other people, at women, at society in general, at the societal narrative, the Disney narrative, things like that. It was much easier for me to put the blame there because at that point, I didn't realize it at the time, but at that point I could abdicate myself of all responsibility for what was going on. And, life is easy when you don't have to take responsibility for what's happening in your life.
So I remember you said about the true force loneliness crowd. Is that what you think attracts people to that type of group, where it's like it's pretty much society's fault and this is kind of out of your hands?
I think that's a very big selling point for a lot of them. I don't ever claim to speak for every single person who gets involved in this, but I think for a lot of guys, going on the Reddits and like the incel Reddits and the red pill Reddits and looking around at what they say, I think definitely it is. You can just tell from how they post and the language they use in their posts that they want to look for some kind of boogeyman to see there's some boogeyman outside of themselves to explain why they are not getting the kind of success that they feel like they deserve or they feel that they're owed. And so if they have that boogeyman, then it's like, okay, now I have kind of a sense of purpose. I can go out there and I can live my life and I can do my best to defeat this enemy, right? This enemy that is stopping me from getting what I want. And what's ironic, and the more I read into the red pill, the more this irony started to take shape, was you really want women, right? You want a girlfriend, you want a relationship, but you're framing it as the girl and the relationship and the women are the enemy. So it's like, how are you going to get a healthy relationship in your life when you're already, before you even set out the gate, you're framing it in this way that these people are some kind of enemy you have to defeat.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a good way to put it. And I know you alluded to this point, but it's so interesting that you say you were married and you found this. So how was your like? I know you mentioned this briefly, but how was your dating life before you officially got married?
Yeah, it wasn't very active, let's say. I mean, I would get dates here and there,
Hmm.
but they weren't. They would never last very long. The relationships would never last very long, and as a result of that, I started to take on a lot more of a sense of lower self esteem about myself. My value, my worth. I got caught in the trap of. I think a lot of red pill guys do this too. They define their worthiness. They define their overall worth as a man by how attractive the opposite sex on average finds them. And I think that that is a very dangerous trap to get involved in. I was definitely there
Hmm.
for a while. Um, you're leaving it to other people to define your worth. And I know that in recent years we have a lot of red pill authors who are very much against that. You've got to define your own worth. You've got to be the one who's going to assign value to yourself. And I completely agree with that. That's one of the things about one of the more modern red pill teachings that I actually fully embrace and agree with. Like you cannot just sit back and allow women or allow anybody else for that matter, man or woman, to define your worth. You've got to take action yourself, and you've got to be the one to define that for you.
Hmm. No, I totally agree about that. So okay, wait, how long did you follow the red pill?
Well, I started about 2007 or so, and I was there until pretty much my divorce in 2015.
Okay. Well, I do want to get to that, but before I do, so what are some of the similarities between then and now, in your opinion?
I think the biggest similarity is, kind of as I alluded to before, setting up that conflict, that sense of conflict between you as a man and the women and the society and the belief systems of society that are keeping you from achieving that goal. They'll come and they'll say, "Oh, well, this is just the way. This is not my feeling. This is just the way society is, and you have to work within the confines of this society. And yeah, it sucks. And yeah, people are out to screw you. Women are hypergamous and all this. And as soon as they find somebody better, they're going to leave you and go to somebody else." That's still the same. The only big difference I'm seeing is that there is kind of a groundswell among certain authors and certain people to take more of a responsibility for how you're feeling, regardless of what happens to you. But the kind of anti woman, anti feminist, anti in a lot of ways anti-mainstream society, those feelings are still very much there.
Okay. Yeah, I was kind of wondering because I know sometimes there's a narrative that the red pill wasn't as toxic, but it became toxic gradually later on. I don't know how true that is because I haven't read those old forms.
I think there's definitely, in a lot of ways, it has become more toxic, just with the out and out woman bashing and just. I mean, there are some subsets where like they're advocating for a return to a traditional society where women have little or no rights. I've seen this on some of the forums. There are people that are talking like this, that this is what they want to have. I think in the early days you saw less of that. So I definitely think that, and I think a lot of it is politics. I know in your videos you tied the red pill thinking currently to a lot of the political stuff
Mhm.
that's happening, especially in the last several years, and I definitely do see kind of an overlap between certain political beliefs and a belief in this return to tradition, return to traditional society kind of thing. And I think that is one way in which it definitely has become more toxic over time. Um, so yeah, there definitely is that. So I agree with that 100%.
Okay. Now, we did talk about this in the pre-interview, and I'm kind of,
Mhm.
I do want you to share this with the audience. You said that the red pill did have an effect on your marriage, which eventually led to your divorce. So, do
Yeah,
you care to?
I do. I definitely think, well, it wasn't the only thing that led
Okay.
to the divorce, but I think it
Hmm.
was definitely a big thing. I started reading more and more people. I started going into Rouge more heavily, Chateau Artiste more heavily. Guys like Matt Forney, who was around at the time. I was reading a lot of their stuff, and I started questioning a lot of it was like questioning my own sanity. I had certain beliefs about how relationships should go before I started reading all that. And then afterwards, I was looking, actively looking for those signs that those authors were talking about. And when I would see any kind of little semi hint that may be one of the signs that they're talking about, I would just be like, yep, this is it. This is exactly what they were talking about. Right. And I would start to get a little bit more confrontational with my wife. I would start getting a little bit more snappy. Calling her out on these things, and we would get in more and more arguments, and it was just a very unpleasant time to be in that relationship. I definitely was not at the mental state at that point to really take on the responsibility of a relationship, let alone a marriage. And I definitely think that my kind of paranoia about the whole thing definitely led to the decision to get divorced several years later.
Okay. And what were some of those signs? I remember when you talked about dread game. I had to look that up because I actually hadn't even
Yeah,
heard of it.
yeah. It's like when your girlfriend or your wife or whoever starts losing a little bit of interest, right? You want to get that interest back by making yourself more scarce, and basically threatening, like, hey, there may be other options out there for me, and if you're not pulling your weight in this relationship, then I may exercise those options, right?
Hmm.
And it made me feel so shitty having to do that, and having to play that kind of game with her. It's not how I envisioned my relationship going before I was married, let's just say. And it just led to the erosion of trust all the way around on all sides. And when you can't trust your partner, how do you expect that relationship to last?
Hmm. And I mean, what happened afterwards? After you got divorced?
Well, afterwards, I really started to do a lot of soul searching about, my beliefs and my thoughts, and, how I might have contributed to the downfall of the marriage. It's like that old saying, you don't know how much is gone till it's actually lost. And it wasn't until it was actually lost that I really started thinking, maybe, I mean, definitely some things were her fault in this, but maybe it wasn't all her fault. Maybe I need to take some of the responsibility about this. And I also knew that if I was going to have a healthy relationship in the future, I needed to do some heavy duty work on myself. I needed to do some heavy duty work on my mindset. And dating was one of the only things in my life that really, I don't want to sound like I'm humble bragging here,
Mhm.
but it was really one of the few areas in life where I just absolutely sucked at. Like, mostly if a task was presented to me, if I put my mind to it, I could do it. And I could feel reasonably comfortable and confident about doing it, whether it was in my career and my job, whether it was acting, or whether it was playing the drums or whatever. If I could put my mind to something, I could do it. But with dating and relationships, that was one thing where I just felt completely and utterly useless. And I decided that I want to find a coach, somebody who can help me with my own blind spots personally. And if this person was trained in psychology, that would be all the better, right? But I specifically need relationship help, and I need mindset help. And it was very fortunate for me that I found somebody just by doing a quick Google search. I interviewed a bunch of people, and there was one guy who absolutely connected with me right away. And we worked together for about a year and a half. And he completely changed my mindset. He told me, not told me, but he showed me where I needed to take more responsibility for myself and my actions and my results. And he also taught me that, women are not someone to be feared or someone to be seen as a antagonist or as an adversary, but as just a normal human being. And I think that's what gets lost in all of this. Like, people say the red pill has become more radicalized, and I definitely think that it has, in that women are seen as less and less of a human being. I think the more we go on, the more it's like, yeah, men can have all these different personalities and have all these different, characters, whereas women, they're all the same. All women are like that. Like that. That's one of the taglines, right? And it's like, no matter what they do, they're just nothing but biological robots. Whereas we men, we're actual human beings. We're fully human, right? So it sets the stage. Whereas we're always looking down upon them, right? And one of the things my coach taught me was that you can't, if you're going to be in a healthy relationship, you cannot look down upon your partner. You have to look at them as being a human being, just like you. And it turns out that the more time I actually spent with women and dating different women, the less of a red pill advocate I became, because I got to see that there really was a lot of diversity among women and their wants and their desires and their goals for a relationship. They all didn't want the same thing. They all wanted different things. They wanted their own version of a good life and a good relationship and a good marriage. And, sometimes I would come across people whose goals and values matched mine, and we got on great. And sometimes I would come across people whose values were completely different from mine. And you know what? That didn't go past the first or second date. And you know what? It was okay. I didn't have to hate all women because a couple of them turned me down, or a couple of them, I wasn't compatible with. I just kept going. I kept having fun with it. And I think that's the thing in dating these days that's lost. Nobody has fun anymore, right? It's like we're all on Tinder or whatever, and we're all looking at this like some sort of big important job interview, right? To see, are you good enough to be with me? And it's just, we got to have fun again, right? It's like, okay, even if this doesn't work out, right? I've met a new interesting person, and I know that this person isn't for me. So, that's one more person I know about. So there's less mystery in the world. So I feel good about that. So I can go on and try to find the next person, right? And I had fun with it. And that's, I think that was the biggest gift I got from, leaving the red pill and getting back into just, I guess you call it more of a blue pill mindset, is that I just had fun again. And I was able a couple of years ago to meet a really amazing woman, and this person, we've now been together for 2.5 years, and we're going really strong. And I'm really happy with where I am right now, and I'm happy that I'm treating this person as an equal. I'm not looking at this through a red pill lens and wondering, every little micro move she makes, is this the day that she's gonna, monkey branch and jump to the next guy or something? I'm not worried about that, and life is so much better that way.
No, that's really good to hear. I'm kind of curious what you think about this. So one time I was talking to a guy from that Reddit forum, the ex-red pillars, and he told me that in his opinion, the red pill was good for short term, but not for long term.
I think that, yeah, I can kind of see where he's coming from with that, because a lot of guys, where they get disillusioned in dating is in the beginning stages, right? The attraction stages. And they'll go on a date maybe one time and it doesn't work out, and they think, oh, well, I must really suck. I must be unattractive. I must be ugly. It's got to be my looks. What else could it be? It can't be my personality. My personality is great. So they get stuck in this mindset where it's like, oh man, like she doesn't like me. I must really suck. And it goes back to that, tying their sense of worthiness to what women think of them, right? So when you're applying more red pill teachings to the early stages, it kind of helps you prevent that sense of what you would call what the old pickup artist guys called one-itis, where
Hmm.
like you're so concerned with what this one person thinks of you that you're sacrificing your own sense of self-worth for that person. And this is a trap that a lot of guys fall into, and this is what gets guys really disillusioned with the dating process, especially if it's happened over and over and over again to them. So if you can use kind of that I don't give a fuck attitude to kind of guard yourself, especially during those early stages, then it can definitely be a benefit to you. But I think once the relationship goes past even a couple of dates, and you're starting to think about maybe I want to date this person exclusively, then I think at that point you need to kind of let that shit go, because the longer you go in a relationship and the more that you practice this stuff with it, take it from me, take it from the firsthand experience that I've had, the worst is definitely going to get for you.
Hmm. That's actually good. It does bring me to a point. I remember you commented it on my channel one time that you say for your job you traveled a lot, like to Asia and South
Mm-hmm.
America as your old self, and kind of struggled. You care to elaborate on that story?
I was always fascinated by other cultures, particularly East Asia. I was a big video game nerd growing up, and I watched a lot of anime, and so I was always curious about that part of the world and where that stuff came from. And so, I went there for college for a year. I taught English there for a grand total of 6 years. It was a great experience. As far as how that relates to the red pill, I know that there's a very big group of people who think, well, women in Asia, or women in other countries, for example, they're much easier to game, so to speak. They're much easier to pick up. I think that while there's definitely an exotic factor to you when you go over there, and that might help with initial interest a little bit more, when it comes to actually maintaining anything long term or even semi long term, you still have to put in the work for that. Because at the end of the day, people are people, right? And they want to be attracted to you, right? And with most people, I mean, yeah, with some of them, they're only attracted to your skin color or to your perceived bank account or whatever. But for the vast majority of them, they want more than that, right? And if you're not going to be a quality human being, right, it doesn't matter if they were initially attracted to you or not. Like, if you're not showing them that you're a quality human being, they're going to be like, okay, see ya. So it's not. I don't think. Or let me put it this way: I think that a lot of these guys are confusing the very, very early initial impressions with overall success in dating or in relationships. And there may be a slight correlation there, but it's definitely not causation, shall we say.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, that's kind of that's a good point. So yeah, I'm curious. What made you join the forum? I know you say you found my channel through the forum. So what made you, even though you no longer follow the red pill, what made you join the forum to interact with other people who are just like coming out of the community?
I guess it's just my desire to help people. I am kind of a helper by nature. And I remember how much I struggled when I was going through all this, and part of it is just like I want to help guys who are coming out of this with the struggle, with the possibility of relapsing. Like, there were several periods after I left where I thought about relapsing and going back to it. It's a very, very strong pull, and if you're not fully out of it, you can very easily relapse. And, when I was coming out of it, I didn't really have that, except for my coach. I didn't really have that help from like a community. And I'm really glad that Reddit exists right now, because I feel like there are a lot of men, especially a lot of young men on that forum. I notice a lot of guys are like in their 20s, and they were in the red pill like during their high school years or during their college years, and now they're on their own, like they're starting to question those beliefs. And I feel it's really important for guys like me and some of the older guys to be there for the younger guys, to just be like, hey, it is possible to come out of this. This is not something that you have to be with for the rest of your life. There is light at the end of the tunnel if you want to search for it. And myself and other people like here, we're here for you if you want it.
Oh, interesting. Because I followed it out of curiosity, but I was 26 and I was kind of laughing at some of the stuff they said. I found it entertaining, but just some of the stuff just kind of just flying over my head, and my lived experience contradicted. But I never actually even thought about how it can be kind of addictive to people who are fully invested into the community and can fall right back in pretty easily.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. It takes a lot of effort. Like when you've been with something for, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, right? It takes a lot of effort to really change that trajectory that you were on. It takes a lot of concerted effort and a lot of retraining of your mind, a lot of retraining of just your daily behaviors, what you choose to consume. The thing that really did it for me was just burning all those bridges. Like I would just completely unsubscribe. I would block people on my social media. Like I had to absolutely burn the boats, because if I was still around that, like even if I thought I was coming out of it, I would see a post or I would see a social media thing from somebody, and I would click on it just out of curiosity. I'm like, oh, this isn't going to affect me. I'm done with red pill now. And then I would look at it and it'd be like, actually that makes a lot of sense. And then I'd be right back into it.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to caution people, if there's anybody listening tonight who is like kind of on the fence, like they're thinking they might want to come out, like they know that this isn't serving them, right? They know that they have to make some kind of change, but they're not quite sure how to go about it, how to get off the fence. That's what I would suggest. If you're really serious about leaving this behind you, you just got to burn all the bridges. You got to do the nuclear option. Just block those people. Delete that browsing history from your browser. Rearrange the YouTube so that it's not showing you more of that kind of stuff. You got to put in the concerted effort. It starts with that, right? So that would be my suggestion for guys who are, worried about maybe being pulled back, and you want to minimize that chance.
Interesting. Yeah, I never thought about, like, when I wrote that article in 2019, I thought I was going to finish it, but then somebody emailed me and kind of thanked me for the article I wrote, but I was kind of shocked how isomorphic our experience were. And actually since then, I've received emails from several young men and even women who had the same exact experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like mostly just like the rabbit hole. Like they find it, it pretty much touches an emotional chord with their romantic frustrations, but then they follow other content creators, and that's when they're introduced to anti-feminism, gynocracy, and all these other fringe things that people in general don't talk about.
Yeah, what surprised me, I guess now in hindsight, I'm not as surprised, but initially when I joined that forum, I was surprised at how many women were on there. Either to tell the stories about dating or having a relationship with a red pill man, or reading the red pill content themselves and starting to feel like they were worthless, and that no man would ever love them because and some of them even questioning themselves, is this really my nature? I never really thought of it that way, but is it? And they started to have that kind of crisis themselves. So it just goes to show just how powerful it can be.
Mm-hmm. I was actually going to skip this question, but I see somebody in the chat said, let me pull it up. Yeah, I don't plan on leaving the Manosphere /Red Pill because it still has some value and entertainment for me. And I know that's something I used to say. I used to say, oh, well, it's entertaining, but then I'm like, well, can I really tolerate this when there's a lot of toxicity and misinformation? I personally, I can't. I mean, even though there are some positive attributes, I'm kind of curious. Would you recommend it? Even though you did say there were some good teachings you got from it.
The thing about the good teachings, and I think I mentioned this in the pre-interview. I'll just mention it for everybody here. The things that are the quote unquote good teachings are the stuff that you can find in any self-help book. Work out, be more assertive, stand up for yourself. Don't allow people to walk all over you. You can find that in Tony Robbins' teachings. You don't need the red pill to get that kind of information. And I'm in no way trying to hype Tony Robbins here, but what I'm saying is that there's all sorts of self-help books and videos and courses on Udemy or whatever that are teaching the kind of skills that you need to have to better your life without all the other stuff, without the misogyny, without the hatred of women, without I guess racism has now put itself in there in some of them. Without all that stuff, you can get the good. You can separate the good stuff from the bad and have only the good stuff. You don't need the red pill for that. And that was something else that I discovered when I was working with my coach. Because he pointed me in the direction of a lot of books and videos and things like that had all of the advice that the red pill was giving without the fluff. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually one criticism I constantly get for my channel is like, well, you don't focus on the good stuff, even though I said like, there's some value in it. But my major criticism with that is that a lot of the legitimate advice is really just like common sense and conventional wisdom spewed as a startling revelation. Mm-hmm. And even when they do say things like work out, it's just so basic. They don't really go into like, contemporary exercise science. I don't think many of them like study it. And most of the stuff they said is positive. I found it elsewhere, like on Psychology Today or whatnot. So I just felt like you can just go to another YouTuber or another website where the person specializes in that area rather than going to a YouTuber who is trying to talk about 1,000 different topics as if they're an expert on it.
What I think it's become, especially in the last couple of years, is a marketing tactic. They have to find some way to kind of separate themselves from the other people who are preaching all that good stuff. Why would they buy my book? Why would they buy my course versus all the others out there that, don't talk about what I talk about? And that's where the misogyny and everything comes in, because without that stuff, the red pill is just mainstream self-help. Mm-hmm. And they have to find a way to stay in business, right? They have to find a way to compete with all those other things that have already cornered that market many, many years ago. So they're doing it as a way to kind of differentiate themselves and create like a little niche in that market for themselves. At least that's what I think, and that's what I've seen. Because again, the good stuff you can find anywhere. Mm. You don't have to go to that one source.
No, I totally agree. That's my major criticism. And if you think about how YouTube works, if you follow a channel that talks about like physical fitness and all of a sudden they switch to movie reviews, you're not going to watch that. Same thing with the red pill. If you're going there strictly to learn just about like women, you're not really going to even care that much for like physical fitness and all the other subjects that they like to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I know a bunch of YouTubers and people just by doing a simple Google search, that will go much more in depth into the fitness and much more in depth into, how you should dress and much more in depth in conversation skills and mindset techniques that don't involve thinking that all women are materialistic, shallow bitches who are going to screw you over the first chance they get.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, I have one last question. And yes, I know it's short, but like I said, I really do not want to do this for over an hour for respect for my time and my guest time. So yeah, any final thoughts or last words for the listeners whose story you just told?
Well, I just want to point out that it is possible to put this all behind you. I'm proof of that. I was very much into that space around, 2007, 8, 9. all the way up to 2015. I was there for basically 7 years, or almost 8 years. And at the end of that, like 6th, 7th year, I felt, this is basically where I'm going to be the rest of my life, mentally, emotionally. This is basically where I'm going to be. Like, there's going to be no change in me. My thoughts are solidified now. There's no changing, but there is changing. There's always room for change. There's always room for growth. There is always room to get out of that rut. You just have to make that concerted effort. You have to commit to it. And, like I said, cut ties with that community. If you're looking to get out, that's the best way to do it. You don't owe these people anything. You don't owe them your time. You don't owe them your attention. Just get out, and find something else that's going to give you the benefits of what you're looking for without the stuff that makes you feel cringy. It is out there.
Okay, I appreciate that. I had to block somebody for saying the N-word, which, I mean, it's not the first time I've been called that. I was called that in Lincoln, Nebraska, walking down the street by a homeless man. So that's nothing I ever heard. Okay, so yeah, even as the last question, somebody in the chat super chatted a question, but she said, "Thank you for speaking with us. May I ask you if you had a male role model growing up? Any sisters? Please forgive me if this is too personal."
No, definitely. I'd be happy to answer this. It's not too personal. I don't know if this has anything to do with the red pill or anything, but my role model growing up, I had 2 role models, Albert Einstein and Bruce Lee. And Albert Einstein, just for being Einstein, he told us so much about how the universe works. I think that's a great reason to have somebody as your role model. And Bruce Lee, just for his philosophy of Jeet Kune Do, taking what's useful in something. And I think this applies to the red pill. You take what's useful from it, what you think you can gain from it, that's going to make you feel good, and discard the rest. Discard the useless stuff and create what is uniquely your own. And that is a philosophy that I've lived by since I was a teenager, and I like to continue to apply it in my life even today. As far as sisters, no, unfortunately, I don't have any sisters. I just have one brother. But yeah, I think that may have been an issue with me going to the red pill to begin with. The fact that I just didn't have a lot of female contact at all, even on a familial level, because a lot of my family is just boys. So I think that may have played a part as well. But yeah, no, I don't have any sisters.
Okay. Somebody else had a question. It's kind of similar, but it's like, was he sociable? Did he go to school dances? Did he even have middle school crew, high school buddies? I don't think everybody who goes to the red pill is somewhat like socially awkward, but if you want to answer that, you can.
No, I do think there is a high percentage of socially awkward guys going to the red pill. Of course, it's not 100% for sure. But to answer your question, yeah, I mean, being sociable was kind of difficult for me because I was very much an introvert growing up. I didn't like to speak unless, I actually had something to say. And so a lot of people viewed me as kind of standoffish. I did go to school dances. I did dance with a few girls, but it wasn't nothing really happened afterwards. That's the thing. And yes, I did have a crew in middle school. It wasn't exactly the most popular crew or the cool kids crew, but yeah, I definitely did have my buddies back in middle and high school. So yes.
Okay, well, I sincerely appreciate the time. I know you're busy, and I'm glad that you contacted me because I think it's a story that needs to be told. I don't have any last words, even though I did ask you to have last words, but you already explained that.
All right. Well, yeah, I just want to thank you once again, Aaron, for having me on today and just for being able to tell my story. And, I don't know if this is going to reach anybody or help any guys. I hope it does. But thank you, everybody who showed up and listened to us today. I hope you found some value in it.
Okay, man, I have some trolls. Oh my goodness. Like I said, so next interview actually is on Sunday with Chris, and I'm blanking on his last name. Even though he's in the chat, he gave me $5 super chat. So, and I'm also going to upload pre-recorded content, so don't worry about that. I have plenty of video ideas. I just haven't published them yet. But I hope everybody enjoyed this, and I look forward to the next interview that I'll do Sunday at 3 p.m. So, other than that, I'll just say farewell, everybody, and have a good night.
All right. Thank you.
All righty.